Can you please tell us what is DOHAD and what is its relationship with breastfeeding?
So DOHAD stands for Developmental Origins of Health and Disease, and that has come about since fetal programming was discovered. So influences in the maternal environment affect fetal programming, which affects health in later life. But after birth, the baby is growing rapidly and developing, and so there is another period of programming, if you like, or influence, which is early nutrition. And breastfeeding fits perfectly into that because human milk is full of live components, bioactive components, nutrients, which enhance development of the infant and sometimes rescue the infant from insults, either in utero or, for example, antibiotics given just before birth.
So what are some of those key benefits of breastfeeding that you see in the long term for infant and mother health?
So breastfeeding is associated with slower growth compared to formula-fed infants, and that slower growth has been implied to be part of the decreased risk for the infant for type 2 diabetes, and also reduced obesity, which is a risk factor for all chronic diseases such as diabetes and cardiovascular disease, which are the largest killers of our adult population. And also it has all the immune components in breast milk, which develop the immune system and make it less likely to react to allergens. And allergens again have been associated with long-term disease such as cardiovascular disease. And of course we have this unusual thing about breast milk in that it transmits the tastes and the senses of the food intake of the mother, and that in turn means that the breastfed infant is more likely to taste new foods and eat a variety of foods, and of course a better diet later in life is also associated with better health outcomes.
So with all these amazing health outcomes with breastfeeding, you challenge the audience with a call of action to help improve breastfeeding rates. What do you think their actions should be?
So it's clear from some recent surveys that mothers don't understand that the length of breastfeeding and that breastfeeding or human milk itself is associated with long-term health of their infants, that they are in fact affecting their health trajectory right out to old age. And so I think that mothers are still not well informed about the importance of human milk in their baby's diet. And that's evidenced by less than 37% of women exclusively breastfeeding to 6 months. So we need to advocate and initiate lactation, but we also have to be aware of the problems that the mothers are experiencing during that lactation. And that's why they're weaning early. And one of those problems are obesity, and so obese mothers have a lot of problems breastfeeding for longer periods of time, and they cite insufficient milk supply as a reason. Our animal models of programming show that obese mother mice fail to lactate. Over 3/4 of those mice fail to lactate. So there's a real problem there. And there's also problems with zinc transporters in the mothers, and that affects gland development and milk volume. So I think clinicians and advocates have to be very aware that real low milk supply exists, and it's what we need to be doing is driving towards those mothers and enabling them to give as much milk as they can, as they are programmed, if you like, to give.
So that's your call of action for the other people. What about yourself? What's your call of action? What's your next area of research on this topic?
So my group would like to focus on the zinc issue and work with Shannon Kelleher to elucidate the mechanisms in women and low production, and if we can detect it quickly so that we can inform the mothers and plan for possible problems. We also want to look at the components of milk and how they work together to affect the baby and their health. And that means if we find out what affects the baby's health, we can also look at whether that can be modified in the milk. And so we need to look at maternal influences on breast milk composition, because that will provide us another window and way of modifying our infant's long-term health.